I was shocked. Not only did he reply, but he called me. I got a phone call. Like, I emailed him. I thought I'll never hear back from this guy. And like within 3 hours, he called me. And I actually spoke to the author of The Wealthy Barber, Dave Chilton, and he liked my idea to write this book, and he gave me some great ideas. Actually, he was very helpful. Really nice guy.
People find value in different things, and it's like there's this friction of saying, okay, well, $10 for a book. But then you're saying, frappa wappa woof woof, they're saying I'll give you like $30 for it, right?
Monthly bookkeeping, I think, is the key here to not having any sort of annual crisis after the fiscal year is over.
So I got Neal Winokur with me today, CPA, CA, Neal Winokur, CEO of Finance Without Borders, entrepreneur, author of The Grumpy Accountant. So Neal's here with me today to talk about, for my web series, how to avoid the annual crisis. The annual crisis is the process of creating annual reports. And yeah, so Neal, thanks for joining me today. Neal, maybe you can just give us a brief background of who you are, and then I'd love to kind of figure out, like, why did you get into writing the book, The Grumpy Accountant, and then we can talk about audited financials for nonprofits and charity organizations.
Thanks so much for having me. I started out as an accountant. I obtained my CA designation back when it was CA in 2013, and I started my own little practice, preparing and filing tax returns for Canadians, personal tax returns and corporate tax returns for small and medium-sized business owners. And after a few years of that, I started to realize, wow, like the tax system here is really ridiculously complicated. And I realized very quickly, like, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Why is it so complicated? And I just started to kind of blog about it and, write articles about it and my thoughts and opinions on the tax system. And as I was writing that, I kind of realized, like, there's a lot here. This could be like a whole book, and the idea of writing a book started to like enter into my head. Of course, I had no idea how to write a book and no idea how much work that would entail, but I started doing it thinking this will be a fun project. And it was a lot of work because I self-published it and I didn't know what I was doing, but it turns out, I guess, okay. The Grumpy Accountant, and grumpy in terms of, like, I'm, people who know me will laugh because they know, like, I'm a big complainer and, I come across as grumpy. But, the idea that, like, it's a job, that there are thousands of people across the country that help Canadians file their tax returns is just ridiculous in and of itself. That's what the book is about. Like, this shouldn't even be necessary. My job should not exist, like a tax filer. It's so silly. And the amount of people that work at CRA, I mean, there's over now 50,000 employees at CRA. The CRA is one of the biggest employers in Canada, which is wild when you think about it. And if you compare to other countries, like in the US, if you compare the amount of employees at the IRS, there's maybe double at the IRS, but the US has 10 times the population of Canada, right? So it's kind of out of whack. To be fair, every state will also have, like, or most states will have a state tax authority where there's more employees. So it's not a perfect comparison, but it gives you an idea of how overly complicated our system has become. So that's where the idea of the book was, like, I cannot remain silent on this. I should not have this job of tax accountant should not exist. And it kind of bothered me. That's why I pivoted to Finance Without Borders, Inc., which is less focused on the tax. Although we do tax, we have a tax department, and we help people with their personal and corporate tax returns. But the focus of this accounting firm, Finance Without Borders, what we do is more on the bookkeeping, internal accounting for small and medium-sized business owners, businesses who need help with their bookkeeping and accounting function, controller, maybe they need a fractional controller, fractional CFO, bookkeeping, accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll. We do a lot of payroll. So providing more of a value-added service where it's not just tax compliance, filing your tax returns, but also ensuring that you as a business owner have the data you need from your monthly financials to understand your business and see where it's going. But the book is, grumpyaccountant.ca. You can check it out. It was a very fun project. and it's just my thoughts and ideas of how to fix and simplify the Canadian tax system.
So when I first looked into the book, my thought was, why is this guy still doing, financials accounting? It sounds like you should be doing like advocacy and government lobbying and, getting them to change the system. Has your book made any impact in terms of people thinking differently about the system?
I don't think it's really made any significant impact, but every week there are articles in the national newspapers in Canada, people writing op-eds advocating for simplifying the tax system. I mean, and it's been going on for years. So this was just another, trying to push towards that. The only thing stopping simplification of the tax system is politics. It just requires political will on whichever party is in power to do something about it. So, everything in politics obviously just moves very slowly. So I don't know if change will ever happen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Did my book have an impact? Like, probably not, but I got it out there. I tried. After a couple of years, I just stopped marketing it because I didn't have the bandwidth for it. But this is a known problem in Canada, and like CPA Canada is advocating for tax simplification. There's a lot of the top tax people in the country who write articles, write op-eds in national newspapers advocating for this change. So I hope things will change eventually. I'm not optimistic about it.
No, that's fair. It's one of those, like, it's a slow big boulder that's just constantly being pushed, right? And so we see, Neal for PM, signs everywhere. Who knows, if or when change will happen, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to writing the book, what was the most challenging part?
I think it's interesting. Writing it wasn't the challenging part because, like, all the ideas are in my head. And the way I write, it's kind of how I talk. And I actually wrote the book as a story. It reads as a novel, kind of like The Wealthy Barber. If people have read The Wealthy Barber, I was inspired by it. And I actually spoke to the author of The Wealthy Barber, Dave Chilton, and he liked my idea to write this book. And he gave me some great ideas, actually. He was very helpful, really nice guy. So it reads as a story. So writing it wasn't challenging. The challenge was everything else involved in self-publishing a book. Like, I had no idea what I was doing, and there weren't a lot of resources to help. So just getting everything together in terms of editing and the cover design and the actual design of the book and this and that, all these moving pieces, it was just like overwhelming, just the amount of work involved. I would say that was probably the biggest challenge.
So just stepping back for a second. So when you talked to the author of the Wealthy Barber, what was his kind of, tips or advice that,
Well, I reached out to him because after I read his book, I was inspired to write my book in the same way, as like a story, like a novel. So I'm a big Seinfeld fan. So I peppered into the book a lot of Seinfeld references. The main characters of my novel are George and Elaine. So any Seinfeld fans watching this, will get a kick out of it. But Dave Chilton said, I kind of asked him permission to do it because I didn't want to, like, rip off his idea. And he was like, of course you can do it. Like, go for it. But the best advice he gave me was the chapters should be short. Like, you shouldn't have too long chapters, short chapters. And he's like, Neal, no one's going to read a book about the Canadian tax system. It's boring. So you have to make the book fun, but also put in tax tips at the end of every chapter. I'm like, oh, that's a brilliant idea. I didn't think of that. He's like, give information. So that way when they're writing a book, they'll get something out of it, right? So at the end of every chapter, there's like a little tax tip that relates to the material in that chapter. And that was a really good idea. And he also has a book course online called The Chilton Method, which I did his course. It's for like people writing and self-publishing their own book. And I found it really helpful. There were a lot of great tips in there as well.
Did you do that course before you reached out to him or after?
I don't remember. I feel like it was after, but I don't remember exactly the timing.
See, to me, this is interesting. Now we're going off on a tangent, but like, I imagine that Dave gets so many emails from people. So just the fact that he looked at your email, replied to you, and got back to you, and you had this conversation with him.
I was shocked. Not only did he reply, but he called me. I got a phone call. Like, I emailed him. I thought I'll never hear back from this guy, and like within 3 hours, he called me. And he was so nice. And we spoke on the phone it wasn't like such a long call, but he was just so nice. And he just was so encouraging and supportive. And I was really moved by that. He's really, really nice.
That's really cool. So what was the trick to get him to reply to the email? What do you think?
I don't know. I think he's just a nice guy, and he likes helping people. Like, there was no trick. I just wrote an honest email. I said, hey, I read your book. I'm writing a book now about the tax system. I'm a disgruntled, grumpy accountant. I want to call it The Grumpy Accountant. I want to write this book as a novel, as a story, kind of like how you wrote The Wealthy Barber, but I don't want you to sue me. I don't want to like rip off your idea. And he called me. He's like, no, of course not. It's not my idea. Like, anyone can do this, and go ahead, and it's great. And add in tax tips, or else no one's going to read it. I'm like, wow. He's just a really nice guy.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
And when it comes to your book, like obviously the tax tips make a lot of sense. But like when you talk to people that have read it, like what was the takeaway? Was it the stories? Were they looking for the tax tips? Was it kind of like the combination? Because like one thing we're going to tie it back to annual reports. You kind of have that mix of the boring stuff that needs to be in there, like like the financial statements and that type of thing. And then you have like the impact stories, right? So it's like the same thing where you're having the mix of stories and then information. So in terms of your audience, like where did you find that kind of people were drawn to?
I think a lot of people who are anyone in Canada who has their own business, like if you're self-employed, whether you're a sole proprietor or you have a corporation, you see the complexity of the tax system much more than someone who's an employee who receives a T4 slip. Because now even someone who's an employee who receives a T4 slip might still see a lot of complexity in the tax system, because they might still have investment income and medical expenses and donation. Like there's over like 130, I think, tax credits and deductions on the personal tax return. So the feedback I got from the book was like, it resonates with a lot of people who have experienced the complexity of the tax system and that frustration. It's just nonstop. Every stage in life, every single life occurrence, like basically has a tax implication now. Because the way the tax system is, it's like politicians pander to every single kind of voter at every single stage in life. So you have the child care tax credit and you have a disability tax credit. Like anything that happens in your life, there might be a tax implication. You might be eligible for some credit or deduction, which is like, oh, that's good, because you'll save money on your taxes. But the bad thing is, well, now the CRA needs to verify all of this. So it just increases the cost for everyone, the complexity for everyone. It's kind of unfair because a lot of people don't even have the knowledge to know what they're eligible for. So you have to hire people. So it makes it more expensive for you to comply with it and benefit from it. So I think it resonated with people who like have personally experienced this frustration.
Right. And I'd imagine that you probably get the most interest of your book around tax time. Because like if you're 6 months out of tax season,
right?
Personally, I'm not thinking about taxes, right? Like the books are being done every month. Like that's under control.
Right.
We're taking care of our GST payments, and all the money the government wants every month or quarter from us. But then outside of that, it's like, okay, well, let's just once November hits, we're going to start thinking about it, right?
I think a lot of business owners, it's a struggle throughout the year, because they have to remember about making installments, like let's say you're you have a corporation, so you have corporate income tax installments, you have your GST or HST installments, and if you have employees, then you have payroll tax you have to pay every month or every quarter. Like it just goes on, and like you forget one thing, one payment, boom, penalties, interest. Like there's no mercy. There's no like, okay, you can apply for taxpayer relief, but that could take months and months and months, and it's like never. Then you have to file your corporate tax return. You have to file T4s. You have to file a GST, HST return. You have to file a personal tax return. You got to do tax planning. Like it's a never-ending thing. And I think people really struggle with it.
So when it comes to marketing, so like again, I'm thinking the tie into annual reports is it's not just creating it. Now it's the marketing it and getting it out to the annual reports go to the stakeholders. They go to the board. They go to their current donors. They go to prospective donors, and then there's the opportunity to use all the content material. General day-to-day marketing, social media. So when it comes to your book, how was the process of marketing? What did you find effective? What was the most challenging part?
Yeah, I think I remember I did a lot of interviews about the book, like just kind of online, like podcasts and things, and that was really fun. I wrote a few op-eds that got into the Financial Post, the National Post, in the print version and online. It's got a lot of views. I don't know. how much that generated like sales of the book, although it did a little bit. The marketing was challenging because to get people to actually buy the book is like the challenge. But the easy part was, like I did a lot of those interviews, got op-eds. It was a lot of fun, but it was challenging. It's very hard, like as a self-publisher, to get the word out there and really drive a lot of sales. Like it was a very humbling experience. Like it wasn't easy,
But it's funny, like, because I have my book as well, right? And you assume, okay, well, it's like $10 or $20. That's like one Starbucks drink, right? And you're like, okay, how can I get someone to trade like one Starbucks drink to buy my book, which has valuable information plus entertainment, and it's going to last more than like 5.5 minutes, right? But it's just like the people find value in different things, and it's like there's this friction of saying, okay, well, $10 for a book. But then you're saying, frappa wappa woof woof, and they're saying, I'll give you like $30 for it, right?
Yeah. No, it's challenging, and I think that like it's about somehow creating that demand, and that's why Dave Chilton told me put in tax tips, right? So that helps with it. But yeah, the marketing and sales was a challenge. It was challenging for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's always figuring out who cares, why do they care, and then trying to get them to take action, right? Yeah. So even if you get their attention, people get distracted so easily, and then they may never come back.
Right. So I even tried to get partnerships with like large, like for example, TurboTax, which is owned by Intuit, I believe. I think Intuit, which owns QuickBooks and TurboTax. I wanted to get a big partnership with them that like with they just buy my book, like 10,000 copies, and they just sell it. They just give it for free as a promotion to people who are purchasing TurboTax to file their tax return. But they're like one of the largest corporations. They're not gonna. It was very challenging to try to get anyone there to like acknowledge me. So it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge for self-publishing in Canada. Like it was not easy.
But I mean, I'm sure you're just proud of being able to produce something, and people when someone actually buys it, that's like for me, like when I wrote my book, the biggest excitement that I got was when someone in the States bought it that I had no connection to. So they saw it on social media, they ended up purchasing my book, they sent me a comment, we had a little conversation, and to me it's like holy shit, like someone outside of my network, like even my country. And not even on the same coast, on the other coast.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm like, okay, well, like this is cool, let's get going. But then, it's like you get that one sale, and then it's like you have to keep grinding. It's kind of how much work are you putting in for like $10 here, $4 there, right? Like it's But I think it's just how you use it too, right? Is it just awareness for your tax firm, or is it like you want to just sell books, right?
Right. Exactly.
Which is kind of it's that nice kind of marketing piece for your business as well, which is kind of cool. So when it comes to nonprofits, in my mind, I know you told me when we just opened up that nonprofits and registered charities are different. In my mind, they're the same because they're not for profit. But regardless, basically what we're trying to figure out is how to help nonprofits and registered charities avoid the annual crisis of annual reports. And one of the key components that everyone needs to have is the audited financials. So basically, like we see kind of like two different ways they're kind of displayed within the annual report. One is just like kind of like the table of financials. So like this, if someone have a foundation and they have like the corporation. So they'll have like two sets of different financials. Some have like audited document that is maybe like 10 pages long, and it has the financials and the kind of note from the financial company that did the auditing that the processes they went through, and maybe some notes on the data in there. So we're looking at how can we keep these organizations on track throughout the year, and get these audited financials as painlessly as possible. What is kind of like your tips? What's the best approach?
Yeah, I mean, the first step, if you need audited financial statements, the audit firm, whichever accounting firm is going to do that audit engagement, they will want to see the books being completed. Like there has to be a clean, complete accurate set of books, means bookkeeping, accounting. So you can't start an audit engagement. They can't start doing audited financial statements if the bookkeeping wasn't done for the year. And bookkeeping means, your bank account, credit card, like every transaction has to be recorded, whether you're using QuickBooks Online or Xero or QuickBooks Desktop or whatever accounting system you're using, right? There should be bookkeeping being done, not at the end of the year, not after the year. Let's say it's December 31st, year end, and you have to have those financial statements out by 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months to have the annual meeting, for example. And whether it's a registered charity or a not-for-profit in Canada, you have to file by 6 months after the year end. So you need those financial statements within 6 months of the year end. So, and the audit firm might need a few weeks, a month, 2 months to get that audit done, maybe more, maybe less, right? But it varies. So you have to have bookkeeping done. Like I would highly recommend and urge that that's the first step. So anyone running a not-for-profit or charity here should ensure that there is a bookkeeper, a bookkeeping service. Someone is responsible for the bookkeeping every single month during the year. Maybe every quarter, if there's not a lot of transactions, but monthly bookkeeping is the key to this. Because let's say it's January to December fiscal year end. If you're doing monthly bookkeeping and by, let's say, the 15th or the 20th of each month, the previous month's books are done, completed, bank is reconciled, everything is done, then in January, after December 31st, you just have to do 1 month. Just finish December, close out the books, January to December, you're good to go, and you could start the process right away. So I think a lot of people, these charities, not-for-profits, same thing with for-profit businesses, it's the same thing. It's the same struggle, is getting this stuff done throughout the year consistently, monthly or quarterly. So at the end of the year, you're ahead of the game and you're ready, and you're not scrambling to try to do bookkeeping for the past 12 months. You're not going to remember 8 months ago what this $100 transfer out of the bank account was, right? So, but if you're doing it monthly, you will remember, 2 weeks ago, yeah, I remember what that was, right? So monthly bookkeeping, I think, is the key here to not having any sort of annual crisis after the fiscal year is over.
So one thing, so like I know, it's like we work with organizations of all different sizes, right? So you have ones that have like full-on tax departments in-house, or like accounting departments, and then you have some where, if we don't submit our invoice to them by the last Thursday of every month, it's going to take an extra month to get paid because someone comes in for a couple days to do everything. Then I imagine that the challenge with the smaller organizations that are in that boat, the problem is if there's that $100 transaction that's not labeled. Now they have to send a question, saying, what is this? And then if they're not in for another, 3 or 4 weeks, then, that I can imagine that'd be where, things start falling apart, right?
Yeah. And that's why, like, all these organizations should have some sort of service, a bookkeeping service or a bookkeeper. It can be once a month. Like, that might be sufficient for organizations that don't have as many transactions, for small organizations. And there's a lot of bookkeepers out there. I mean, our accounting firm offers these kinds of bookkeeping services, monthly bookkeeping or quarterly bookkeeping. And there's a lot of people doing that, offering that kind of service. So but the point is, you fall behind. And if it doesn't matter the size of the organization, the books still need to be completed, right? And even if you don't need an audited, like some not-for-profits and charities do not require audited financial statements. They could do a review engagement financial statement, or just the annual T2 filing for nonprofit or T3010. But in either case, you still need a set of financial statements. You still have to report that to the CRA. You need the balance sheet, you need the income statement, and you need it for the annual meeting to present it. So there has to be some form of bookkeeping, and there should be a system in place and a person in place responsible for that.
So when it comes to using, like software systems, does it matter what they use?
No, I mean, you could use anything you want, but there are certain ones that are better than others. Some people have different preferences. Like the two most common now being used, QuickBooks Online and Xero spelled with an X, like X-ray, Xero. Those are the two most commonly used ones now. For registered charities that are issuing donation receipts, tax receipts, whether throughout the year, at the end of the year, there's like different apps and, you know, different service providers that offer that and kind of automate that as well. But it doesn't really matter what you're using. What we recommend is people use something like QuickBooks Online or Xero, because what it allows you to do is you can go in there, connect the bank account, and then it will automatically upload all the transactions from as they hit the bank account. And then we're just going in, or someone on your end or our end or whoever's doing the bookkeeping can just categorize the transactions. So it eliminates a lot of the manual entry of how people used to do bookkeeping, let's say with an Excel spreadsheet or, you know, QuickBooks Desktop, before they had that ability to like automatically kind of import all the bank transactions. Now even the desktop versions have that ability as well. So it doesn't, like, what I always tell people is which software you're using isn't as important as the people who are doing it, to make sure that they're responsible, they're getting it done, it's getting done in a timely manner, it's being done correctly. But I definitely recommend a system that allows for the sort of automated importing of all the transactions, the bank account, the credit card. That eliminates a lot of manual entry that used to be required and cuts down on the time.
So when it comes to common pitfalls, other than not keeping the books, you know, up to date every month, is there anything else that, you know, kind of raises a flag that, you know, these people need to be aware of?
I think, you know, having it done monthly, quarterly. The other big thing would be keeping documents, especially for an audit. So when an accounting firm comes in to do an audit, going to request to see a whole bunch of different kinds of documents, invoices and receipts and bills and, you know, lease agreements and other kinds of legal agreements and donation tax. Like, there's a lot of stuff they want to see. So if you're keeping paper records, like in a physical office, and you have boxes of paper and folders, that could make the process kind of more inefficient, less efficient, and, you know, cumbersome. So I would say, to make it easier, it might be a good idea to invest in a really good scanner, have everything scanned in. And there's a lot of different now, you know, secure file sharing systems that people like to use: SharePoint, ShareFile, Dropbox, Google Drive. I mean, there's OneDrive. There's a lot of different ones. And the audit firm, you could just have everything in a folder scanned in, and then just like share that folder with the audit firm, and they'll have everything they need, right? Or whatever they ask for, you can drop it in there. So part of the process that makes an audit engagement kind of annoying or frustrating is the audit firm will send you a list of everything they want to see, and then it's going to take time for you to gather everything, right? But if you have it all ready to go, right, if everything's kind of scanned in and organized, you have a folder and then there's subfolders of whatever, you know, that can make it a lot easier. Whereas if you kind of just keep everything throughout the year in a big box and it's not organized, that will make it harder. So we do this with our clients. We advise them. We get to know the client and what they're like, and then we will set them up on, there's different systems and apps out there that we like to set them up on in order to scan receipts in throughout the year. Very easy with just take a picture on your phone. Like, there's all these different apps that make it a lot easier. Drag and drop on your desktop, or even if you have a receipt in your email, you can just forward it into your system. Like, so easy, so you don't have to print and scan everything. So I definitely recommend, you know, implementing some sort of system where you are keeping records and files and documents in a more efficient manner, because that will make the audit process much smoother.
So it sounds like the key takeaways then is monthly bookkeeping. And then when you're doing the monthly bookkeeping, make sure, you know, at the end of the month, every receipt document is scanned in some sort of secure file system. And then, you know, your release agreements, you have your receipts month by month, any other, you know, documents, and then you give it to the audit firm, and then hopefully they have everything they need. And then, you know, they turn around and you're good to go.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah.
When it comes to the audit process, so how long, like, I mean, obviously there's some, like, you know, different complexities, but how long would that process usually take? Would it be reasonable to assume that's going to take a 2-month process?
I mean, look, obviously varies, right? It could take anywhere from, yeah, like, I would say at least a few weeks, a month, maybe 2 months. could be longer, depending on how large the organization is, how much they're, you know, and the nature of the activity of the organization. You know, the audit firm has to do its work according to the rules of, you know, CPA, whichever province they're in, right? There's, you know, so yeah, like it could take a couple months at some time, at least. I mean, it really varies. There's no one answer to that, but there could be back and forth, because once you send the auditor the initial information, like what we call a trial balance and a general ledger, like the books are completed on your end, you send it to the auditor, and they're going to then send you a list of everything they want to see, right? Now, some audit firms are more organized than others. So in some audit firms, you might get 10 different emails from 10 different people asking to see a million different things. You know, the more organized ones will send you, like, you'll have one person running it, right? And they'll send you a big list. So then you have to gather everything, send it to them. They have to do their work, examine everything, take all their notes. And, you know, so it could be a long, drawn out process. And then the financial statements and the notes, the financial statements, and then on their end, they have to review it and sign off on it, and you have to sign off on it. So it definitely is a process, you know, but it's hard to say like it should take this amount of time. It really varies.
No, that makes sense. So it seems like, you know, if you're looking for a new auditor, or, you know, you don't have one, or you want to change it up, that you're looking for someone that has, you know, basically a list of this is, you know, what everything you need, and there's going to be one contact person, and you're not going to go through the system. So it seems like, you know, like, I'm not saying that, you know, the disorganized ones might be great what they do, but basically, like, organization is probably key for alleviating a lot of the stress and the pain points.
I think that's exactly right. Organization is key. If you have an organization, a not-for-profit charity, and you need an audit and you need a new audit firm, you should definitely ask them about this. Like, how does their service work? What will it look like? Who will they be dealing with? Are they organized, right? Like, try to get that information beforehand, because that, you know, that would make the process smoother if they have a lot of experience with it and they have a good system in place. That could definitely help for sure.
That makes sense. So, Neal, thank you so much for this chat today. I have one kind of closing tradition that we do. So I asked ChatGPT, I give it some prompts about you and what we're talking about, and I asked for a question to ask. And so the question I got back was, so as the grumpy accountant, so when we're talking about you know, nonprofit annual reports, audited financial statements, it's easy to see why someone becomes grumpy. How do we flip that around and make people excited about it?
I guess it would be, you know, showing people the value of getting this done, right? So if you're responsible for a not-for-profit or charity and you hate this audited financial statement process every year, look at it, just change your perspective and mindset to, like, realizing that this process could actually help your organization. The auditors might find things that you have missed. They might suggest efficiencies. They might suggest better internal controls. They might suggest better accounting systems. There might be improvements that they can find. They might find that you're spending unnecessarily in certain areas and could save you money. They might find certain revenue streams, like certain types of activities, are more, I don't want to say profitable, but generate more donations or more, you know, incoming receipts of money than others. Like, they might find things that really help your organization. So, and that's the same thing with the tax system. Like, yes, the tax system is too complicated, but that means that there's ways for you to benefit from it, right? So it's just looking at it from a different perspective. Look at the audit process as, this is going to help your organization identify issues, identify problems, fix problems, right? So it's just like it's just kind of trying to change your mindset a little bit.
Yes. So you're basically changing your framing from something that's passive and reactive to something that you're getting all this data, you're doing analysis, and now it's a strategic review process for the organization. So yes, you get the audited financial statements, but it's also, okay, this is where we're seeing, you know, traction with it, you know, revenue or profits, or, you know, even expenses. You know, we see expenses going up on this side, and, you know, can we look at this to see if there's ways that we can change things? So it's more of an opportunity and not just a task that needs to be completed.
Exactly.
See, now, now I'm like, okay, like, let's look at the books. Let's do some financials.
Yeah.
Like just reframing it, I think gives people more
Yeah.
excitement. We see more
Yeah.
opportunity.
Exactly.
Well, perfect. Well, Neal, thank you so much.
Exactly.
It was a pleasure.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Thank you.